Good evening, everyone. I've been told this one works better. Oops. Even better when I turn it on. Good evening, everyone. My name is Catherine Keegan. I'm the Director of Teaching and Learning at the college, and I'd like to welcome you all here tonight. It's great to see so many parents here to support their sons on the start of the high school journey. With all of our college functions, we begin with a prayer, and I'd invite Connor and Lachlan to join me on the stage to start our prayer for the evening.
Pause to remember the uniqueness of this place. We honour and respect the generations of the Thorough people who held this planned in their dreaming. We begin our prayer for wisdom this evening in the name of the Father and the Son and of the Holy Spirit. Lord, I know you are with me and love me. Give me peace of mind as I prepare for this time of study. Help me to focus on my books and notes. Keep me from all distractions so I will make the best use of this time that is available to me.
Give me insight that what I might understand what I am studying, and help me to remember it when the time comes. Above all, I thank you for the ability to study and for the many gifts and talents you have given me. Help me always to use them in such a way that they honour you and do you justice to myself. Saint Marcel and Champagne, Mary our good mother, and let us always remember, in the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, Amen.
Thanks, gentlemen. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for coming out tonight. I just wanted to welcome Prue and say thank you to her for coming along, also to Mrs. Keegan, Mr. Hart, and Mr. Brennan, who are here to support the evening as well. But my main reason in talking to you tonight, you can hear this thunder going on up above us. We're just trying out the cooling system to see how it goes. So what we thought we'd do is we let this run for half an hour, and we need your feedback because we'll turn it off after half an hour and see how you're going. Hopefully you'll be very cool there and it won't make any difference to you. But upstairs here we've got some vents. It sucks the air in through the back here and goes out up through the top. So it's a way of trying to keep you cool. Those who were here last Friday night know how very hot it was inside the hall, so we thought we'd try this tonight, but I'll turn it off after 30 minutes. Then if you can give us some feedback at the end of the night, whether it's cooler or it's not cooler, and whether you can hear. Can everyone hear? Is that a problem? Right, okay.
Our guest speaker tonight is Dr. Prue Salter. Prue's research specialises in study skills and how students learn and apply their studies to both exam situations and assessment situations. We're very fortunate that Prue comes and presents to our Year 7 students later in the year. She also presents to our Year 10 and 11 students, and she's been here already to speak to our Year 12 students. She's a wonderful presenter and very open and engaging. So please welcome Dr. Prue Salter.
Thank you very much, everyone, and welcome. Now, I'm hoping that you're sitting next to your parents because tonight is going to be quite interactive. You need to talk to each other. We've got about an hour together, and during that time, we've got an awful lot that we want to cover. But we're going to begin with a quick little discussion. So if you're not sitting next to your parents, you need to move. If you've got both parents here, you need to sit in the middle. Sitting behind your parents is no good. You need to sit next to them. Off you go. Parents, I'd like you to ask your son the question on the screen. Boys, you've got to give at least a couple of sentences, and then boys, you do the next one. 2 minutes of discussion, off you go.
want me to go up and run them off? Sure.
All right, now you'll find tonight you don't have as much time as you might like to discuss everything in detail, but tonight is all about getting these conversations started. Now, I do need to warn you, I talk pretty fast. I've got a lot of things to tell you, so you'll need to listen pretty quickly as well. But all the slides from tonight, parents, you can print out everything, look at everything again when you get home. So don't worry if you think it's going too fast, you can look at it all over again when you get home. Tonight, parents, if you could turn to the second page of your booklet, the action plan. Whenever you think of anything and you say, I need to do that, remember that, implement that, we need to do that together, write it down. Because you'll forget, you'll think of things and then they'll disappear. You will be working with your son in his booklet as well, but that's where you keep your list of what you want your son to do. Now boys, why should you listen to what I have to say? You don't just get to see me this year, you get to see me in later years as well. I was not a mega bright student. I was much more a hard worker. But I realise now I was lucky. I knew what you had to do to get good marks at school. I ended up with a UAI of 99.1. Since then I've finished 6 university degrees, so I have done a huge amount of study. And I've learned how to do it in an effective way, and that's what I'm going to share with you tonight. We're going to be looking at 5 different areas. We're going to look at setting up your space at home. We're going to look at being organised for high school, how to manage your time and still have a life, and how to get your assessments in on time, so planning. And lastly, we'll do just a very quick introduction to how to study. I'm going to do more on that with the boys later on in the year, but I just want to give them the overview tonight. So let's get started with our first step. Now parents, in an ideal world, it would be so lovely if your son's room actually looked like this. But sadly, for a lot of boys, it's often closer to something like this. Or maybe this, or maybe this. So boys, I'd like you to tell your parents what's similar, what's different about this picture to the space where you work at home. What's good or bad about your space? Parents, remember to add to the action plan if things come up. All right, now you don't have to have a fish, but now that you're in high school, you do want somewhere where everything for school is kept together. Lots of things are on our laptops, but the paper hasn't gone away. Boys, you might need to clear off some childhood books and games and toys and make a space for school. Even putting a couple of shelves up or a bookcase can make a huge difference. We also need to look at how the boys are sitting, parents. Unfortunately with the laptops, the keyboard's in the right position, but our eyes should be looking straight ahead rather than looking down. That causes a lot of neck and back strain. What a lot of the senior boys do is at home, they put their laptop up a bit higher. They get one of those cheap keyboards that plug in. That way the keyboard can be in the right position and the eyes can be looking straight ahead. On the Study Skills website, and I'll show you all these websites at the end, but the big Study Skills one is for you to follow up the areas you're interested in. So for example, we've got a whole unit on the home study environment. There's a very good ergonomics checklist. And boys, there's a very interesting section here that tells you how the colour of your room affects your ability to concentrate. It's very interesting on the research on what different colours mean. So that might be worth having a look at home as well. Now, a lot of boys ask, do you have to study at a desk or is it okay to sit in different parts of the house? For the majority of students, sitting in the same place all the time is a very good idea, because the brain makes a link. Oh, when I sit here, that's when I study, focus, concentrate. But if your son is one of those fidgety, can't sit still, up and down every 2 seconds, sitting at a desk can be torture for those boys. They do like to work in other places of the house. It's okay, provided it's not full of distractions. Boys, you can't work in the lounge room if the TV's there and there's pets and there's food and everything else is going on. So you need to make the space as distraction-free as possible. A lot of boys ask, is it okay to lie on your bed to do reading for school? If you lie on your bed the normal way, that's a signal to the brain, time to go to sleep now. If you lie the other way, boys, it'll break the pattern and you'll be able to focus and concentrate. So if you want to do some reading for school, make sure you lie that way. Out of all the questions I'm asked, the biggest one that a lot of people think about is it okay to listen to music while you're doing schoolwork? So I want you to have that in the back of your mind, and I'll tell you in a moment. Now, 3 other areas to consider. So many boys complain about noisy little brothers and sisters when they used to be the noisy ones not so long ago. I did have a Year 11 boy the other day say, oh, I just use earplugs now, so it's all okay. We will talk about having set times allocated for schoolwork. It's also important to parents to think about making sure that your son has 2 lights, both the room light and the desk lamp. Desk lamp should not be shining towards the eyes, that should be shining towards the work. For some boys, it's worth investing in a decent chair, something that's adjustable, that supports the back. They're going to be sitting at the desk an awful lot in the next 6 years. Bit of fresh air is important, boys, too. So if you have a bit of fresh air, it keeps you awake and alert, you're able to concentrate. So, back to my question. Let's see. Hands up if you think it's okay to listen to music while you're doing schoolwork. Hands up if you think it's not okay. Well, hands down, you're all right and you're all wrong because it depends on the type of music. Most music that students listen to has about 140 beats a minute. This particular rhythm interferes with the process of making memories. So boys, this means if you have CD, radio, iPod on while you're studying, even though you go, no, it doesn't affect me, I can't study in silence, the way the brain works, it actually takes about 5 times longer to retain. Batteries are just, oh, we're back again. Only one type of music helps. 60 beats a minute, low lyrics or words, mostly classical, Baroque music. Now, I hope you know what I mean because I had a Year 11 boy the other day who said, right, you mean like the Bee Gees. It's like, no, I mean like Mozart. If you don't like that music, boys, here's the rule. If you're doing work that's not very difficult, you can have any music you like on. It makes you feel relaxed, it makes you feel like the time's going quicker. But any time in high school you have to study, concentrate, memorize, you need to switch that music off or else have classical because they're finding that boys who try to learn with normal music on all the time, when they go into any tests, their performance is dropping. So really important to remember that. Now at the end of each section, I'll get you to do an activity together, then see if there's any questions before we start the next section. Parents, I want you to do this together. That means don't take over, but don't sit back and do nothing. So you're working on this together. On the student handout, I just want you to do the first half of the page. Step 1, circling yes or no, add to your action plan. If you're a speedy worker, you do the discussion question at the bottom of the screen. If you don't have a student booklet, apparently we've run out. We've got a fair few people here that we had more than RSVP. So Miss Keegan's photocopying some now. Have a seat, and as soon as they're here, she'll distribute them. If any parents took a spare student booklet, if you could just pass that back to us so we could give it to the students who don't have one. Thank you. There's a couple of boys over that side that don't have one. just the first half of the page. If you're a speedy worker, you're doing the discussion question. I'll just give people 1 more minute. All right, any questions? Anything anyone would like to ask or check? Fairly straightforward. Let's move on to our second step, which is organisation. Now, sometimes the students do not like this section because this is where I talk about what should be happening at home. Now, parents, it's early days yet, but I can guarantee at some point your son will say to you, I have nothing to do. When a year 7 boy or any boy in high school says, I have nothing to do, what they're really saying is, I have nothing to do that's specifically due tomorrow that I'll get in trouble for if I don't do. Because the reality is, in high school, there's always things we should be doing. But a lot of boys are not clear, so we're going to make it very explicit tonight exactly what you're meant to be doing each night. The first thing is not even homework. The first thing we do is we get ourselves organised from the day. Now, these boys have got a challenge. They have to manage both the paper and the technology. I think most boys are very good at the first step. They have a folder for each subject, break it down to topics. Boys, make sure you use descriptive file names. I saw a year 11 boy the other day who's trying to show me his study notes. He had to open 11 documents because there were things like English 1, English 2, English stuff. So parents, if you have not had a look at your son's computer, get him to show you what sort of folder structures he's using. What file names does he use? Because year 7's all about setting up really good habits. It's also very important that we back up on a regular basis. Hands up, boys, if you're mostly saving in Google Docs. Okay, only a few of us, hands down. So if you are saving in Google Docs, the backup's being done for you. If not, you need to back up on a regular basis. Year 12 boy a couple of years ago was telling me he lived in a 2-storey house, glass sliding doors at the top and a pool at the bottom. One day he's fighting with the little brother. Little brother picked up the laptop and hurled it straight into the pool. Boop, laptop died. This year 12 boy was doing music composition for a major work. He had spent 3 months designing, creating all these amazing pieces of music. He had not made a single backup in that entire 3-month period. So parents, I think a good idea is either to get a portable hard drive or set up a cloud account. Every Sunday night, copy the whole folder for school across. Again, it's about setting up good habits. Quick chat with your son. What's he like in this area? Do you need to add anything to your action plan? All right, let's see how well the boys are managing the paper for school. So I want all the students to stand up again. All the boys standing up for a moment. Little game of last man standing. Once you sit down, you're out. You don't get to stand up again, okay? So let's see if you've got the paper for high school under control. If you are pretty good at either pasting sheets straight into your book or putting them in a folder, stay standing. If you tend to put them loose into your diary, your book, your locker, or the bottom of your bag, then sit down. Lost a few already. All right, if you have somewhere at home set up for filing, somewhere to file away past tests, assignments, work you finish with, stay standing, otherwise sit down. Now parents, I'll talk about some filing options in a moment. So these boys, they say they paste their sheets in or they put them into a folder. The problem is the folder's going to get bigger and bigger. Boys, every now and then, maybe once a week, do you go through all the things you're taking to school? If you're finished with it, you take it out and you file it away at home. If you've been doing that, stay standing. If you just keep taking everything back and forth, then sit down. Give these boys who are still standing a huge round of applause. Well done to you. Have a seat. Parents, it amazes me how many Year 7 boys don't have simple tools like scissors and glue to stick things in straight away, a folder to put the sheets in that they can't actually stick in. I do think it's worth having a separate system at home for filing. You could get away with one folder for filing, but I like to set things up so they'll work all the way through to Year 12. So what a lot of students do is they have one folder that stays at home for each subject. So when they get a test back, it goes into the subject folder. Assignment back into the subject folder. Finish with these sheets into here. At the end of Year 7, we take everything out of the folders, put it in a plastic tub, and we use the folders again for Year 8. Because that's the type of system we need to get the boys in the habit of for the senior years. People often ask, how long do you need to keep the work for school? There's people who are 50 and had their kindergarten work, but usually you only need to keep it for a year. So you would need to keep it while you're in Year 8, you would keep your Year 7 work just in case you need to refer to something or there's a test that covers it. So boys, I'd like you to tell your parents, what's your system for managing the paper? Do you lose things or have you got a very good system, great filing, you're under control? Where are you at the moment? All right, now we got a little bit sidetracked. We're supposed to be talking about what the boys do each day. We've only spoken about the first one, which is getting organised. So as soon as you come home, boys, and you're ready to start work, 5 minutes getting organised. The homework is not even the second thing. The second thing we do is one of the best habits you can start in high school. We know that if you don't look at something for a second time in 24 hours, you forget 80% of the detail. If you do look at it a second time, it brings the recall back up. Boys, this is why your parents nag you to come home and review what you learnt at school that day. Hands up if since you started Year 7, you've been coming home and reviewing what you learnt at school that day. Well done to a couple of those people, hands down. Now there's lots of ways you could do it. You could highlight the key points in the lesson or use the highlighting tool on your computer. You could make a mind map about what you did in each lesson. You could go in the kitchen and say to Dad, Dad, look, I'm just going to quickly tell you what we did in each lesson today. He doesn't even have to listen. It's you talking about that's important. I love this idea. One Year 11 boy told me when his brother started Year 7, he gave him an exercise book. The Year 7 boy said, well, what's this for? He said, every day when you come home, write down the top 3 things you learnt in each lesson. Because this boy had been doing this since Year 9, and he could see more of what he was learning was staying in his head. So boys, I'd like you to tell your parents, if you were going to spend 5 minutes just reviewing what you learnt when you got home, what would be the best way for you? Mind map, talk about it, highlight, top 3, maybe you can think of another approach. If you don't have the student handout, please put your hand up. If you do not have a student handout, Sir's got a couple more over there. Great. All right, now we can do homework and then we can do assignments. This is where the problems start. I've done all my homework. I've got no assignments. We've been making the boys do lots of work. So let's get the parents to do some work. Parents, if your son has no homework and has no assignments, what else do you think they're supposed to be working on for school? Boys, give your parents a mark out of 5 for how good their answer is. Off you go, parents. What else should they be doing? How'd you go? Here's some ideas. We could go back and look at things we found difficult. You know what? I found that stuff in maths hard last week. I'll do some extra questions. You can read ahead in your textbook, so when your teacher talks about things, you've already got an idea. You might do things like mathletics. You might have access to that, or a lot of the textbooks have got a website in a different brand as well. You've got access to the big study skills website. You could work on that. Making study notes, that's a big one too. Reading, we love for boys to be doing that. If your son finds a subject difficult, getting another textbook in a different brand or a study guide from the school library or bookshop is a really good idea. The other one I really wanted to mention was touch typing. Now, hands up boys if you can type without having to look at the keyboard using all 10 fingers. Okay, hands down. The HSC will go to typing eventually. 2 years, 20 years, we don't really know. NAPLAN's going 100% typing in a couple of years. But I can see that the students who have the ability to touch type have a real advantage in the senior years. It saves them a huge amount of time. But you don't have time to learn this in year 11 and 12. 10 to 15 minutes a day now can really pay off later on. On the Study Skills website, the big one that you have access to all the time, we've got a whole section here on developing computer skills. This one down here, basic computer skills. There's links on there to 3 Learn Touch Typing websites. So again, that might be something you add to your action plan for year 7. Now, I haven't spoken about how much time we spend doing all this. We're looking at all the time management issues in the next section, but firstly, time for you to review what we've done. I'd like you to discuss the questions in step 2. So the boarders, remember, you should be working together with a partner, one of you discussing. Discuss the questions, answer the yes/no questions on page 3. If you're a really speedy worker, you probably won't get up to it, but if you do, start filling in the timetable on page 4. Off you go. Remember, working together, adding to your action plan. All right, hopefully everyone got to finish page 3. Before we look at the time management issues, any questions? Anything anyone would like to ask or check? All right, we've been sitting down for a while, so I'd like everyone to stand up for a moment, turn and face your parent, partner, whoever you've dragged here with you tonight. Everyone up, have a bit of a stretch, boys. Before you can sit down, I'd like you to tell the person or people you're facing 2 things you like or admire about that person. You can't say, I like your hair or I like your top. What do you like about each other as people? Off you go, 2 things, then you can sit down. When you're finished, you can sit down again. All right, so we've worked out that there are lots of different things that the boys should be working on when they're at home or during their study periods. But we haven't talked about how much time they should spend doing this. So let's see from the people here. Hands up if you think the boys are supposed to be doing less than an hour of schoolwork a night. A few hopeful boys, even some boarders. Hands up if you think it's about an hour to 2 hours and more than 2 hours. Okay, so boys, you'll be very glad this is not you. I taught overseas in Hong Kong for a number of years, very high pressure system. The boys there in Year 7 would go to school all day, come home, they would be expected to do around about 4 hours of schoolwork every single night. Every night. So suddenly this doesn't look so bad. Generally we'd say it's around about an hour, sometimes up to an hour and a half. Now this includes everything. This is getting organised, reviewing the day's work, homework, assessments. The problem is that there's a big disconnect with primary school. It's not primary school's fault, it's just the way the system works. In your primary school, your son was trained to complete a set amount of work. He was taught that you do what the teacher tells you to do and then you stop. A lot of boys don't realise that in secondary school it's different. We work for a set amount of time. That means in secondary school there's actually 2 types of work. First priority is to do what your teacher tells you to do, homework, assessments. But here's the difference. If you have no homework, or if it doesn't fill up the whole hour, we're expecting you boys to take some responsibility now and to say to yourself, right, I've got no homework, what else could I be doing that helps me understand what I'm learning? We call this independent learning. It might be researching an area you're interested in. It might be going over something you found difficult. It might be getting ready because you know you're probably going to have a test at the end of the topic. So boys, every night will be different. Some nights, for example, this boy on Monday, he had lots of homework and a little bit of assignments. But on Wednesday, he had hardly any homework, no assignments, so he did some independent learning that night. Now parents, there's a very good handout on independent learning. When you go to the Study Skills website, the easiest way to find all the good handouts is up the top here, things to print. When you click on things to print, you'll find there's lots of different handouts for each of the worksheets, but right down the bottom, all the alphabetical listed things. So for example, there's one here on improving handwriting, one on independent learning. In the next section, we'll be looking at term planners and weekly planners. So there's lots of things that you'll find useful on this sheet. This is another good one too, starting secondary school. It's a 12-page guide. Again, your son could work through that if he had no homework. So boys, that's the big difference with high school. So I'd like you to tell your parents 2 things. Had you worked out that you were supposed to be doing this, that if you had no homework, you did independent learning? And have you done any independent learning so far this year? Quick chat with your parents. All right, now I'm going to ask the boarders if they could move to the foyer. They're going to do a different activity for the next 10 minutes because we're going to talk about working at home and the boarders have a different set of issues to deal with. Now, there's a couple of things I need to tell you parents. It could be normal that your son does more than 2 hours a night in term 1. He's getting used to how high school works. But if your son is consistently doing 2 or 3 hours a night, you need to talk to school about it. That is not the expectation in Year 7. The other problem sometimes is that boys don't have any idea how long an assignment should take. I had a group the other day where a group of Year 7 boys had done a health assignment. Some boys had spent 4 hours on the health assignment. Some boys had spent 27 hours on the health assignment. So boys, you need to be asking your teacher, roughly how long should we spend on this assignment? Just so you've got a bit of an idea. The other problem too, parents, is sometimes your son might say, I have to start till midnight because I've got all this homework and it's due tomorrow. Often it's maths teachers that give huge amounts of homework. So boys, here's what you're supposed to do in high school. If your teacher gives you an enormous amount of homework and it's all due the next day, so it's not that you were being naughty in class and didn't finish it or anything like that, it was just an enormous amount of homework. What we would want you to do is do 20 or 30 minutes max on that homework. Get mum or dad to write a note in your diary that says they did 20 minutes, this is as far as they got. Because if 10 boys come to class with a note, the teacher will realise, oh, that was completely unrealistic. If no one says anything, you'll just get angry and nothing will change. If your son's the only one with that note, then that's an alert to the teacher. I need to help him, he's having an issue here. So really important we have that communication. Now boys, I'm not saying that you can't have a life, okay? What I'm saying is that you need to be realistic. Different parents have different expectations too. If your parents say you have to do 2 hours a night, you can't go home and say that lady said I only have to do an hour. Because in the end, parents trump everything. We give you guidelines, but your parents have the ultimate say as to what's going to happen. So what we need to do is to learn to work effectively. We get our schoolwork done, but we still have all of this time to ourselves. The problem is a lot of boys do not work well at home. See whether you've done this year, boys. Some Year 7 boys, they come home from school and they sort of wait for this magical time when they're going to feel like doing schoolwork. Other Year 7 boys, they come home, they start work, and they literally drag it out over the entire night. They're in front of TV, Facebook, computer, all these things. The research at the moment is showing if you try and do schoolwork and personal technology at the same time, it takes on average about 5 times longer to get the work done. It is not a sensible way of working. So boys, with your parents, I'd like you to turn over to page 5 and write down your top distractions from your schoolwork. I'm sure your parents can give you many suggestions here. All right, so how do we deal with these? If your son does not do a lot of activities, it's very simple. The most effective way to deal with these distractions is to draw a line in the sand and say we're going to keep schoolwork and personal life completely separate. We're going to work in half-hour blocks. In that half hour, no TV, no phone, we learn to focus and concentrate for half an hour. If your son cannot concentrate for a whole half hour yet, make it 20 minutes. Half an hour when you get home, half an hour before dinner. If you've got a lot of work, half an hour after dinner. It's a very simple but very effective approach. If your son is very busy, plays lots of sport, this is no good for you. You should not think per day, you should think per week. You should think 7 to 10 hours over the whole week. Because some nights he get home from training really late and he's too tired. He can only do the bare minimum. So we have to be realistic and say, okay, well, what does his life look like? For boys who are really busy, I do think it's a fabulous idea to go through the process of filling in all the activities you do. You saw a little sample on page 4. On the things to print page, you can print out an A4 version of this or download the Word version. So you say, here's what your life looks like. How can we fit 7 to 10 hours of schoolwork in a way that suits you and allows you to see if you've got enough time? Now, the nice thing about this, parents, is it helps you to see if your son is overcommitted. It takes away the arguments because everybody has agreed. These are the times allocated to schoolwork. The rest of the time there's other things going on. Plus, if your son is very busy, learning to work to a timetable in Year 7 will really help him over the next few years as well. I just had a Year 11 boy email me his study timetable like this. This kid goes to the gym, he plays baseball and athletics. If he didn't have a timetable, there is no way he would get his schoolwork done. Now, parents, every boy is different. Some boys come home and eat solidly for an hour. Some boys have a little nana nap. Some boys like to get all the work done in one big hit. Some boys need a decent break. So there's a couple of things we need to consider. Often have parents say, my son's really talented. He can't possibly fit in all his schoolwork. What is he supposed to do? In the end, there is a finite amount of time. We cannot create more time. You, as the parents, you have the ultimate control over how the time is distributed. I'll tell you now, you're going to have to make some tough decisions over the next few years and say to your son, you can't do everything. You have to choose what you really love. Some boys thrive on being super busy. They race off to debating, off to soccer, squeezing their maths homework. Other boys start to get really stressed and really anxious because they're not coping. There are also many, many boys who the way they recharge is by doing nothing. Some boys need downtime. They need time to veg. And if their life is so scheduled that there's not a spare moment in, those boys get really burnt out as well. So the timetable helps you see what the work-life balance is like. Now, I think it's a really good idea, if possible, for your son to have a whole day on the weekend where he doesn't even think about schoolwork. It's not always possible because of your activities, but if you can, it's good. We want to avoid that Sunday night, leave it to the last minute and everybody in the household is stressed. So we definitely don't want to do that. Now, 95% of boys will need a decent break when they first get home. Most boys cannot start school straight away. I'm often asked, what time should the boys be going to bed? You have to work backwards. You have to work backwards from how much sleep your son needs. The official research is pretty useless. It says 9 hours and 22 minutes, but every boy is different. Some boys, 6 hours and they feel fantastic. The average is 8 to 9. The way to tell, if your son lies down, he instantly falls asleep. That is a sign he's not getting enough sleep for his body. All the sleep-deprived parents will recognise themselves there. If he wakes up in the morning feeling exhausted, it's 3 things. He's not getting enough sleep, he's not eating healthily enough, or not getting enough exercise. So really important that we pay attention to that. We work backwards from it. The other thing that's severely impacting adolescent sleep patterns, the boys won't like this, but the brightness from screens. All the research is now saying there should be no screen time, that's phone, TV, everything, for half an hour to an hour before your son goes to bed. If he can't bear that, at least turn the brightness right down, but the brightness is delaying the release of the sleep chemical melatonin. It's causing lots of issues, and we know the last stage of memory takes place while you're sleeping. So boys, I'd like to just have a quick chat with your parents. What is your schoolwork versus life balance like? And do you think it's worth trying a timetable for this year? Quick chat with your parents. So, could you ask the boarders to come back? Thank you. All right, now, many people, what they do is they write the times out that are allocated to schoolwork and put them on the fridge. That way, there's no arguments. Everybody has agreed. These are the times allocated to schoolwork. These are the times when you're focusing and concentrating. The other thing that some parents have found useful is what they do is when their son gets home from school, this is if both your parents are working and there's no one there at home to supervise you. What a lot of parents will do is when their son gets home, they get their son to send them a text that says, this is the work I'm going to try and do this afternoon, in order. It forces your son to think about what he's going to do. It forces him to make a commitment. It's easy for the parents to check when they get home. So I'd like you just to take a minute to see, is there anything you need to add to your action plan for this section? Are you going to try and work in half-hour blocks? Are you going to try working to a timetable? Or have you already got a really good system that's working at home? So quick chat, what could you do to work better at home? right, any questions? Anything anyone would like to ask or check? 2 more steps to go. The next one is also a time management one. It's around planning. It's really hard when Year 7 first start because they're getting assignments from all these different teachers and things are due different times. So 2 things, boys, that will make your life much easier in high school. First one is the term planner. I would print out 4 of these at the start of every year. They're on the Study Skills website. Remember, you just go to the Things to Print page, right down the bottom of the Things to Print page, where the alphabetical list is, you'll see the term planner. So parents, it's a good idea every term to put one of these up on the wall, from now till the end of Year 12. Whenever your son's told about a test or an assignment, they write it onto there. Highlight test in one colour, highlight assignments another, cross off the days as you go. This way, boys, you can see at a glance, wow, that's a busy week. Ooh, only 2 weeks till this is due. If it's just in your diary, you don't get the big picture. Hands up if you already have some sort of planner, calendar up on the wall at home. Okay, everybody else write down print out term planner onto your action plan. Print out term planner. Hands up, boys, if you at least write things into your diary. Good. Hands up if you use electronic reminders, which are fine. Hands up if you just keep it in your head and hope for the best. Yes, we don't like that system in high school. Now, unfortunately, I think a lot of boys have sort of missed the point of the diary or planner. You open up the Year 7 diary and it often says, my birthday, holidays. If you're lucky, it might say assignment due. But there's no planning. There's no, when am I actually going to do this assignment? Boys, if you don't break the work down, if you only write in when it's due, a diary that looks like this is absolutely pointless. So I'm going to show you a short video about good diary use. This is not the only way to use your diary. If you do something different and it works for you, of course, that's fine. But I like this because it works through to Year 12 and it takes a lot of stress away from managing your workload. As you watch this, boys, think about how it compares to what you do. Just goes for a couple of minutes. We'll just get the, can you get the volume up? We'll start again.
Some schools don't allow you to put personal information in your diary, but if they do, it's a good idea to keep the personal information separate. So some students rule a line, other people just keep it always on the side, and make sure you use a different pen colour so it stands out clearly. Also use a different pen colour for due dates. So again, you can see when things are clearly due. But for the rest of your diary, use a consistent pen colour. Now you need to treat things like assignments a little bit differently. If you're told that you've got an assignment, don't try and write all the information here, it will get very crowded. Instead, turn to the back of your diary, there's usually a notes page, and this is where you can write down anything your teacher tells you about the assignment, refer to it when you need to. When you talk about the assignment, immediately turn to when it's due, and in a different pen colour, write down assignment due. But then go back, and that night actually make a plan in your diary of what you're going to do to prepare for that assignment. So once you have a look through the assignment, you might decide, okay, I'm going to do most of the research on Saturday. There's 4 parts of this assignment, so I'll start the first part on Monday, and the second part on Wednesday, and I'll finish that off on Thursday. I'll start the third part on Friday, which means in the last week before it's due, I'll do the 4th part, and the night before I'll go through and check that everything's finished. It should be done by then. If you actually put a plan in your diary, you're much more likely to actually do it.
So boys, what we want you to do in Year 7 is every time you're told about a test or an assignment, you do a bit of a plan in your diary. Some boys do the planning at the bottom of each day. Some boys rule a line, homework on one side, planning on the other side, or they do the planning in pencil in one of the columns. Parents, a lot of boys will need one-on-one help with this. Because as you can see, it's basically project management skills. I used to have to sit down with a lot of Year 12 students and do one-on-one with this. So boys, if you've got your diary or planner here, you can show your parents. If not, tell them, what sort of things have you been doing to plan out work for tests or assignments? What's your approach going to be? All right, now some boys say things like, there's no point me doing a plan. I never stick to plans. People with good time management, they make a plan and then they adjust it. But what I've seen some boys do, if they finish the work, they highlight it, they tick it, they cross it out, that's fine. If they don't finish it, they leave it there. And they're always looking back in their diary, trying to see which little bits they haven't done. Such a bad idea. Much better system is to highlight what you finish. If you don't finish it, cross it out and reschedule it. Immediately move it forward. That's what we'll look at in the second half of the video.
You'll notice too back here that a lot of things have been highlighted and crossed out. A really good idea in order to keep track of your work is what you do is you go home each afternoon and you have a look at what your homework is that you need to do. Think about what's most important, what are you going to do that work, and actually write it in your diary. Okay, I have to get the maths done first, then I need to get the English novel done. I want to then start my science assignment, and this homework's not due till Friday, so I'll do that last. At the end of the night, when you finish your homework, have a look through and think what you got done. Okay, I've got the maths done, yeah, I've got the English done, I've started my science assignment. I didn't get the English homework done, so don't leave it there. You don't want to be looking back in your diary. Instead, cross it out, move over to the next day, or whatever you're going to do it, and actually write into the diary English homework. And that way then, you don't need to look back. Everything you've got is in the right order, and you know, okay, I'll get my English homework done next night.
Now boys, I know that you've got the ribbon on the diary, but I actually think it's a good idea to get one of these little binder clips. The ones like this, you just clip together the earlier pages, that way it automatically opens at the right part, it forces you to keep moving the work on. So what I'd like you to do with your parents now is to think about how this applies to you. At the bottom of page 6, I'd like you to circle yes or no and see if there's anything you need to add to your action plan. All right, any questions before we move on to our last step? Anything you'd like to ask or check? For our last 15 minutes or so, we're focusing on how do you study for a test in high school. As I said, this will be a bit of an introduction and we'll be doing more with this with the boys later on in the year. But before we do, let's all stand up again. Even at home, boys, every half hour it's good to stand up, have a bit of a stretch, get yourself to focus again. Now, parents, I apologise because for some of you this is going to be a long time ago. It might stretch your memory. I want you to think back to when you were at school or university or whatever. What sort of things did you used to do to study for a test, and how well did they work? Off you go, parents. Share your gems of wisdom. How did you used to study? Did you know how to study when you were at school? When you're finished, you can sit down again. Now, boys, I'm hoping that your parents did not say things like, I look through my book, I read through my book, I read through my notes. Because we know just reading through your book is a very slow way of studying. But your parents might have told you, a lot of people were not taught how to study when they were at school. So you're lucky, because you're going to find out nice and early, which will make your life so much easier over the next few years. Now, parents, remember you can print out all the slides from tonight, But this particular one, I think, is actually already in your booklet on page 3 or 4 or something. Now, boys, there are 3 steps to studying in high school. Whether you're in year 7, year 12 or university, the first step is to make study notes or summaries. Many of you have never done this before. It's okay, my cats are going to show you in a moment what they are. The second step is to learn the notes by testing ourselves. Now, in primary school, they actually only teach you one study technique, but it's actually a very good one. Does anyone remember that series of words from primary school? Any idea? Mum does. Any of the students? Big voice? Look, say, cover, right, check. Well done. Sometimes they put the say in a different order. Look means you read it, you cover it up, you see what you can say out loud, you check if you're right or wrong, and then you might say it out loud again. There's lots of variations of it. But you know what? All it comes down to is you don't just read it. You read it, take it away, see what you can say out loud, or see what you can write down, then you go back and check. That is 1,000,000 times better than reading your book over and over. We're going to look at some study techniques tonight, and we'll look at some later in the year as well. The last step, you can't just memorise things, you've got to do lots and lots of questions. Questions out of your textbook, revision sheets, past exam papers. So boys, let's see how well you're listening. See if you can tell your parents what are the top 3 steps to study, and do you do those 3 when you study? All right, how did you go? Make some study notes, learn them by testing ourselves, and lots of practice. Now, before I show you some examples of the study notes, what I'd like you to do with your parents is to actually look at some study techniques and see whether you've used these. So 2 things I'd like you to do. On page 7, you'll see 3 boxes there, straight down the page of your parents. Tick if you've done it before, cross if you haven't. You can do a question mark for sometimes. And then once you've done that, circling yes or no at the bottom of page 8. Take a moment to do that now with your parents. All right, now boys, year 7 is all about setting up good habits and trying new things. We do not expect you to be perfect at studying in year 7. All we want for you to try is lots of different study techniques and see what works for you. We want you to ask older brothers and sisters what they do. Ask friends, ask your teachers, what's a good technique to study for this subject? What we do not want to see boys in year 7 doing is this. We do not want to see year 7 boys studying like this. Yeah, I know that. Yeah, I know that. Reading your notes over and over is a very slow, very ineffective way of studying. Even if you take it away and see what you can write down or see what you can say out loud, that would be better. On the Study Skills website, parents, we've got a whole section here on active studying. So anytime your son has a test, you might come to this website together and have a look at some of the study techniques that other students have suggested. Now, I want to spend a little bit of time, our last 5 minutes or so, looking at study notes. Remember, that's the first step. Study notes or summaries. Let's see from the boys here. Hands up, boys, if you have ever made any study notes or summaries before. Hands up, parents, if you've ever made study notes or summaries before. Look at that, boys. Hands down. Your parents know this is one of the secrets to doing well in your study. But many boys have never ever come across this before. It's not something that's very big in primary school. So I'm going to show you what you do. Firstly, we know that the more you organise information, the easier it is to understand it. Boys, this is not summarising. If this is what you think summarising is, it's time to rethink it. So let me show you the process. Parents, this is also written down in your booklet. I'm sorry if you're a dog person, boys. I didn't have any dogs, so I had to use my cats. This person's getting ready for a test, so let's look at the steps. First step. First step is always to look through all the material. Don't start writing straight away. Otherwise you will copy whole sections out of your book. So you get your class notes, your textbook, your computer, your handouts, you look at everything. Once you've had a look at everything, the second step is to make a list of all the headings and all the subheadings. So this is where you get a separate piece of paper and you say, what did we actually learn about in this topic? What did this topic cover? And you're writing down a list of all the different sections in the topic. Third step. They want to get to those birds out there. Third step is to do a mind map. Doesn't matter if you've never ever done one. Blank piece of paper. We put the topic in the centre, then we come back and we put the headings into circles. We've got a whole section on mind maps on the Study Skills website. If you have no homework, boys, making a mind map about what you're learning is really good for the brain. Parents, mind maps are very right brain. Point form notes are very left brain. When we're doing both of them together, we get a whole brain approach, which is much better for memory. Now boys, see how that's a bit squishy? It's hard to get your mind map perfect the first time. So often I'll do it once, and then I'll get another piece of paper, and I'll stretch it out just to make it a bit clearer. Now boys, I don't know if you saw that movie, Meet the Parents, but it is true. You can actually train a cat to use a human toilet. This is in the training ring stage. This one, step number 4 says, for each heading, to make point form notes. Now, I know this is a generalisation, but usually what happens is that boys tend to not write enough in their study notes, whereas girls tend to write way too much. Boys often don't use enough colour, whereas girls often go crazy with the highlighter. You can see, boys, this is very different to your class notes. I often meet you 7 boys who go, I didn't get it. Why do you write out a whole other set of notes? Why don't you just read through your book? Reading through your book is the slowest way of learning. Plus, by the time you get to year 10, we're expecting you to be very good at doing this. We're expecting you to be able to take lots of information, organise it, reduce it, put it into point form, put it into your own words. Year 7, we just want you to have a go. Even year 8, we're not expecting you to be fabulous at this, we just want you to have a go. So any time your teacher says there's a test coming up, a little bell should go off your head and go, that's right. When you have a test in high school, you make point form notes about what you need to learn. So that's always the first step. So you can see, boys, there's no big long paragraphs, no big long sentences. We're cutting the information down. Parents, we definitely want the boys at this stage to handwrite their study notes. Handwriting sets up the pattern of the brain. It creates muscle memory. Tests are still handwritten. So we would prefer that the boys do not type their study notes, okay? Really important to do that. So quick chat with your parents. Boys, what's been your experience? Did you know about this? Is this all new to you? Have you had a go before? Quick chat with your mum and dad. Okay, any questions? Anything anyone would like to ask or check around study notes? So parents, we do have a whole section on the website that looks at summarising, At some point, if your son has no homework, it might be a good idea to go through the summarising unit together and work through that one. There's also a very short introduction to how to study in the starting secondary school unit. Definitely worthwhile. Now parents, on this site you'll also find things like that diary video is there as well. So the idea is that if your son has a particular area, for example that he's weak in, how to study for a language, how to study for maths, how to improve handwriting as well as essay writing skills. Lots of different sections here. If he has no homework, you might pick one of these units and work through it. Now, I told you about the things to print. One other thing, parents, here I want to show you the highlights. I had a Year 11 boy a couple of years ago who said, I know there's a lot of good stuff on the website, but I can't be bothered finding it all. Just tell me where the best stuff is. So the highlights page is a good place for you to start because it's a lot of the things that people are looking for. Parents, the access details to this website are on the last page of your handout. So if you have a look at the last page of your handout, you'll see the access details for the website. I think you can also access it through the school site. Mrs. Keegan will tell you about that in a moment. If you would like to print out all the slides from tonight though, this website you have all the time. It doesn't go away because there's an awful lot there. If you would like to print the slides out from tonight, that is on a different website. Turn to the front of the parent handout. The front of the parent handout, you'll see the web address there, www.enhanced-learning.net. Can you please write down the password? The password is success. So to get the slides from tonight, the password is success. When you go to the website, you'll click on download slides. Your school will be listed there. You'll see some follow-up material as well. So the idea of tonight is to get you started. You know, there's a lot to take in. I would choose the top 5 things you want to implement and just focus on those. Once you've got those under control, go back and look at everything again, choose the next 5. Don't try and do everything at once. We're not expecting you to do that. All we're doing tonight is giving you an access to all the things you need to know that you can then choose to work through. Every boy will be different, so there's different things you need to work on. So this website, the Enhanced Learning website, is on the front of the parent booklet. Password is success. Now, before I hand back to Miss Keegan to farewell you tonight, let me give you your homework. Boarders, you don't have to do this bit of homework, just the boys here with their parents. You've also got the evaluation, if we could ask you to fill that in and leave it on the table on the way out. I'd like the parents, well let's start with the boys. I'd like the boys to tell their parents, what are the top 2 things you would like your parents to do or stop doing that would help you most with high school? And parents, what are the top 2 things you would like your son to do or stop doing that would make you feel more comfortable about how they're approaching their studies? Thank you for your attention tonight. Boys, I'll see you again later in the year. If you have any question, parents, you can email me anytime through either website. Thank you very much and good luck.
Thank you very much for joining us tonight. We're very grateful. Mr. Miller is very keen to find out on the way out how the air conditioning, in inverted commas, went. So if you could fill him in on that on the way out, he'd be very grateful. As Prue said, if you could also fill in the evaluation, that helps us to make decisions about future events. And also just a reminder, gentlemen, that Prue will be back, I think on the 29th of April, to give you a bit of a polish up for your exams. So please join me again in thanking Prue Salter. And good night.
You can go. Thank you very much.